Okay, it's great to speak today with Peter Tomlinson, CEO at Endurance Sports TV. Peter, how are you doing?
I'm doing good.
You're
I'm
doing good.
yeah, it's looking forward to what's going to be happening over the next 20, 30 minutes in the chat with you, Gary. You know,
Well,
excited.
hopefully it'll be a good 20 or 30 minutes. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
always
Well,
good to talk. Apparently,
yeah. Well, today's going to be a busy day, isn't it? So you've got the official launch of the Endurance Sports TV CrowdQ campaign. So am I right that it's been private before, and now you're going to the public phase? Is that how these things work?
exactly.
Yeah.
And basically, the whole principle is that before you actually go out there to the public, that you generate an interest, you generate almost a starting sum that you can then start to sell to the public and get people involved. It's been a challenging and interesting 30 days in the private phase. It's a lot of communicating with your network, and obviously that means that I end up sometimes spending 2 hours talking to people in order to talk about everything that's been going on throughout this year and where we are as a business and everything else. So it's almost not like an investor discussion, purely because it is private, so everyone you're connecting to, so
Yeah.
it's more of a personal discussion. They know me already, they know our business already, so letting them know what happened this year, where we went, what we've done, so it's a different phase to what I think is going to begin today, which is going to be a lot more the transactional investor discussions, understanding the general and real metrics behind the business and how we're structurally moving that business forward.
Yeah. So, but can you tell us a bit about the campaign? Why you decided to go to CrowdCube, and what your target is, and what I suppose what you're going to spend the money on if you get to that fundraising target.
Yeah. So why we decided to go to CrowdCube in particular? There's quite a few crowdfunding platforms available. Um, each platform tends to have a specialization in the types of business that they represent, and crowdcube seem to match reasonably well with what we're trying to attain as a group of investors and people that we actually want to get involved in our business. So that was the reason why we went to CrowdCube. Why we actually went crowdfunding at this stage, I can only say that from the investor market this year has been strange, obviously, for all the reasons. We sit here in London where, we're at the heart of the equity investment world, but it has been so challenging to try and keep an eye on where people are going, how people are connecting to businesses and what they're looking for in businesses. Again, when we then tag that onto where our industry's been, makes it even slightly more challenging. So we went down the CrowdCube route as a first step, basically to get the seed funding in to allow us to move ourselves forward in the second half of this year as we see things opening up. And we actually went into almost a role of stasis at the initial lockdown phase, but we quickly came out of this, and so much of our energy has been spent on how we actually see the rest of 2020 coming out through to our planning in March 2021.
Right. And so, total amount you're looking to raise is?
Our initial target is £150,000.
Mhm.
I'm happy to say we've got about £60,000 of that in already, which is great. We've got some investors that are really engaged with our business, which is what we like as
Mhm.
a business. To have people who are engaged allows you to get much more direct input from your investors to what they think is good, what they don't think is good, and it also allows you to temper the input of different investors. And so that's been really interesting for us. And again, as we say, as we move into the public phase, I think we're going to get into some more new groups that we clearly today don't yet know, and that will again give us new insights, new challenges that can only help us to become a stronger and more missed it
Rounded.
stronger, just a stronger business.
Yeah. No, definitely. So I suppose it must be like, as you say, an interesting process, because obviously you're used to fundraising in different businesses. With all the experience in Japan, I think you've worked, and various other industries. So maybe sort of tell us a bit about Endurance Sports TV, and also I suppose in terms of the challenges that you've had, they're going to be slightly different to events businesses, but I'm guessing they're similarly aligned in that obviously events have been put on hold for the most part, although some are now starting to come back. As a broadcast business, maybe to a bit of background about what you do with your content, and also how you sort of see the future going. That'd be quite useful, I suppose, as a context.
Yeah, I mean, and you're right. When you look at the overall endurance industry business, we're a particular part of it. We're not at the public engagement eventing side, but we do connect the public at the other end of the industry. And I think what we see is that there's a complete ecosystem, and you know this as well, you're part of it. Mm-hmm. There's an ecosystem behind endurance sports, and the whole ecosystem turns and runs together, and everything supports that next element in the chain. And it's clear that as we've seen one end of the eventing chain dry up, the one thing that was interesting for us was the content sharing end of the chain was still very active. And so it's been quite interesting at seeing one end of the business completely inactive and the other end peaking purely because people were sat at home and they wanted to watch more content. And then obviously, as we've gone through this whole period since March, there's been changes in the way that behavior has moved. There was a middle part when both ends were reasonably sedentary. And then what we've found is that as we get towards the end, the television watching has gone down quite a lot. And I'll say thankfully, because people do need to get out there, they do need to engage, and so you see that people are now out there, they are engaging. And so it's going from a television viewing side much more to where it should be, and much more to a healthier perspective for the world. And so now as we see the events coming back, that's taking our business back to what everyone phrases around the world as the new normal. I don't think anybody understands what the new normal is yet, but certainly as a business, we've been working reasonably hard to structure out how we think we should be behaving during this new normal phase. And our cursory planning at the moment is that we'll be operating slightly differently through till March next year. And when we say operating differently, it's not a reduction in what we're doing. We're not sat here locked in waiting for things to happen. We're simply behaving in a different way with our market, with our partners, and with the type of content we can generate and get access to.
So I'm guessing that would be more along the lines of like endurance sports documentary type programming, rather than obviously the event broadcast specific stuff that you guys get involved in too.
Indeed. I mean, if we look at where we started in March, I'll say 2 weeks before the lockdown was called, we saw the gun being loaded as such by all of the counts in the hospitals around the world going up. And so we saw in March that the season was going to be perturbated, to say the least. When that happened, we immediately grabbed the team together. We went through 3 steps, addressed 3 priorities. The first one was protecting the team, making sure everyone was in a safe place. So we moved out of our offices. We put everybody into or everybody went working from homes, which was the first necessary step. The second priority was then to protect the business, which again, that first month, trying to understand financially what this meant for us, how we were going to be managing that as we went through the future. And then the third step was redefining what we can be as a business, understanding this wasn't going to be a glitch of 2 weeks. This was going to be at least a year of behaving differently. And I think that the team that we have around us and the team that are in the business have done a brilliant job at trying to work out what we can be as a business in this new normal phase. And then also from this, what we can learn as to what we can be as a business, even when we do see it coming back, we will be different. The world will be different next time when we do all see everything coming back. And I think that will create more opportunities for us as a business to get and reach to our base.
It's exactly. I think, isn't it, the often misquoted Darwinism is that it's the quickest to adapt survive, not the strongest.
Yeah.
And I think that that ability to be flexible and to interpret change is obviously key, particularly where things are so uncertain. So have you had any obviously events have gone, and as you mentioned rightly, you know, that it's an ecosystem that's fundamentally connected. And almost it was a bit like a house of cards, wasn't it? Back in March, lockdown, events were cancelled, lots of postponements. So, from obviously the athletes are uncertain, businesses are uncertain about what's going to happen. Did you have any particular challenges other than what you just outlined? Was there anything other than the loss of events that kind of caught you off guard, or was it just simply trying to just get your house in order as you sort of dealt with things?
I think the biggest challenge we faced was, as a new business, March 2020 was our launch for this year, you know, and it was, we'd spent the winter understanding how we wanted to structure this business during 2020. We'd had agreements, and we put agreements in place to push through 2020. And then it was literally, we were meant to be actually having a live stream of Cape Epic in South Africa. And on the day of the first leg, they called and cancelled it. And so we were there. We were on the starting line. The gun was almost fired, you know, and we were just about to go. I mean, we saw it coming. We hoped that the South African race would go on, just because we saw how fragile everything was around the world. We weren't surprised it was called off. And so immediately it was this thing as to, okay, how do we behave? What do we do? And, you know, we had a lot of communication with a lot of our partners, athletes, producers, event companies, etc., as to where they were, how they felt, how they were going to go through this. And I think everybody adjusted their position along with those next to them, you know, and I think it's shown one thing, which is the strength of a community. And the one nice thing about the endurance sports community is that there is a massive positivity behind it. It is about moving forward. It's about people improving, people getting better. And that then allows us as business to focus on how we can move forward, how we can get better. So even though everything gets pulled down at one point, we're then all there again, training, doing the hard sessions, putting the energy in, knowing that if the more we do during this phase, the stronger and fitter we'll be when we get to that next step, which is where we see it now. We've already seen quite a few races going on in the last 6 weeks, and it's been absolutely brilliant to see some of the athletes out there. And you see them, their physical fitness is at such a great level. They've all embraced the new way of training, whether it be indoors or just staying local, but them not having to travel every week of the year, and them being able to really focus on their training has moved the athletes to a different place. A lot of them are beating their data that they had last year and on previous year, and this is because they're able to do such precise controlled training. So when everything has been unlocking, you see them jumping at everything that can happen. And it's absolutely wonderful to see. And it's just an example of our industry. We do want to go forward. We do want to move, and we do want to engage in everybody. And we're part of that, fortunately.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I suppose in the context of moving forward, can you maybe talk us through a bit around the next steps for Endurance Sports TV? How will you use the funds raised from your Crowdcube campaign through to sort of, you know, to drive the business forwards? You know, that'd be quite interesting to get a sort of inside steer on that, if that's possible.
Indeed. And I think, again, this comes down to a backdrop of the new normal. But I believe that the new normal is something that we will carry through longer term into the way our business functions. So we've already been out filming in Norway 2 weeks ago with a world champion OCR representative, which has been brilliant. So we've got a documentary on John Alban coming out in the autumn. And so it's great being able to connect with an athlete. He used lockdown to basically reposition himself from a training perspective. So we've followed all of that, and we've got that in-depth connection with John, which is brilliant. We've got some filming coming up around the Outlaw Triathlon, which is coming up in a few weeks as well, which I won't say any more about today, but you know, that's going to be very exciting. Again, connecting to another world champion triathlete. We've got some more series coming up on following the sports personalities, chat shows, and really allowing our audience to connect and understand how people behave, what drives them, how they get to the start line, how they then manage to achieve such great results at the finish line. You know, and so what we've really been focusing on, and where we see this going for the next 6 months, is a lot more about connecting with those people in endurance sports and understanding how they get motivated, how they achieve the results they've got. So that's what we're doing from a content perspective. And so what this means from a financial perspective, and the funds that we'll raise through CrowdQ, is that we're spending around 40% of it on content, around 40% of it on marketing, and then the remainder, which my math isn't going to be perfect here, it should be 40, 35, then it should be a 25, which is the remainder, sorry, on basically all of the
other. Your 5%, it's okay.
I know. So normally I do 30, 30, 30, but then there's 10% missing. So, you know, I have to pick my poison.
So yeah, so the remainder will be on
the remainder's overheads. I mean, clearly, you know, and this is where we were fortunate, and I think a lot of businesses in today's world have been fortunate in that they have been able to flex because of technology. And so from our side, technology doesn't hold us back in any way. It helps us. You know, we had our office that we were working in this year. And so obviously having to move the team out of the office mean that we lost that personal connection with the team. But thanks to the technologies today, you can almost replicate it. There's a little bit we do miss through the personal contact, but you know, being able to use the technologies allowed us to keep our business functioning. So we were able to move quite quickly to behaving in a new way. We were able to use those new technologies to enable that to happen. And we've not seen much of a dip in our communication as a team. So that was very important for us.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I suppose for any investor watching, or obviously investors following your CrowdQ campaign, you're bullish therefore about the growth for your business, and you sort of see that as we get into 21 and the subsequent years that you're going to be seeing a good growth curve.
I am. I think that one thing has come out of this is that it's clear that users want to connect to events, to people, to the sports, and that's what we do. We're here to do that. We're here to do it in a specific way. We represent endurance sports, which is really interesting when our objective is to be the home of endurance sports, but more importantly, when you pull that down, to actually get it so someone can come somewhere and understand what endurance sports is, the different elements around it, how they can connect to it, how they can get involved in it, and how they can move from one area of endurance sports to another. I mean, obviously, with us being able to bring it all together, people see you may arrive to watch a triathlon or to follow a obstacle course racer or a trail runner. And as you do this, you're then able to get insights to those other sports. And the more we see is people do move between sports. It's interesting. There's a understanding how to challenge yourself in different ways. It moves you from one sport to another. It can be for tourists. It can be to be with friends. There's so many different drivers around the overall endurance sports market. But from a growth perspective, where we see this going forward, it's only positive. We know our industry is growing at around 30% over the next 2 years with respect to online television as such. And then what our objective is and what our responsibility is to provide the great content that could go alongside that growth.
Well, fantastic. I mean, it's been absolutely fascinating listening to this. Wish you all the very best with the campaign as you go public. And let's keep in touch. And yeah, I'm guessing you're going to have a few more releases coming out in the next few weeks, sort of unveiling bits and pieces of content that you've got coming up too.
Yeah, we've got lots coming up always, and it's interesting in this world where everything is apparently locked down that you could still achieve to get so much content. there have been times this year where we've had so much coming at us, we've not know how to deal with it all. And we've got some lovely releases coming up in the next, well, we've got some going out this week. I think we're releasing content every week, you know, and this is where the team work really well to find those people with the great content around the world that we know is interesting to our viewers, you know. So yeah, lots to do, lots to continue to push on, and you know, just appreciate the opportunity to connect with all the different people around the world related to the endurance sports business.
Absolutely. Well, exciting times. Thanks again for your time. And yeah, as I say, let's watch this space, and wishing you all the best for the future.
Thank you very much, Gary.
Thanks a lot. Take care. Cheers. Bye-bye.